By the year 2028, which is just 2 years from now, the AI platforms you use every day, the algorithms running your social media, and just the invisible cloud storing your digital life, it could devour 12% of the entire United States power grid.
Yeah, 12%. It's wild to even think about.
And yesterday, Congress actually woke up to that reality.
We're basically watching the legislative branch realize that the digital frontier isn't, weightless.
Right.
It's this massive, heavy physical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Concrete, steel, server farms that need huge amounts of water for cooling. And it's quietly rewiring the nation's energy map.
And they are scrambling, like absolutely scrambling to build a rule book for a game that's already being played at lightning speed.
Oh, absolutely.
Welcome to Congress in Context. Today we're doing a deep dive into the official congressional record for Tuesday, June 23, 2026.
Bypassing the cable news shouting matches completely.
Exactly. We were looking directly at the raw legislative machinery. We've got a massive stack of primary sources to get through today.
So many bill summaries.
Tons of them, yeah. Plus the official floor transcripts from both the House and the Senate.
And committee reports, too. Our mission here is to really extract the critical nuggets. We want to see what actually happened.
Right, from huge bipartisan housing victories to some incredibly tight partisan Senate votes on presidential war powers.
It's a really fascinating cross-section of modern American government trying to, reassert itself.
Totally. And real quick, before we pull apart this first piece of legislation, a short housekeeping note for you listening.
Always important.
Yep. This deep dive is a completely independent, nonpartisan project. We don't take corporate payee money, zero. We rely entirely on you to keep this civic education infrastructure running.
It's how we keep the lights on and keep it ad-free.
Exactly. So if you find this level of analysis valuable, you can support us through the Buy Me a Coffee link, which is located right in your app's show notes.
It really allows us to spend the hours needed to sift through all these hundreds of pages of text so you get the distilled actual mechanics of these laws.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're starting with something you don't see every day. A rare moment of overwhelming consensus in the House.
Yeah, that was H.R. 6644, the 21st Century Road to Housing Act.
Right, and it passed with a 358-32 vote.
Which is massive.
A huge margin. Passing comprehensive housing reform with that kind of support really implies that the economic pain of the housing shortage has basically overridden normal partisan gridlock.
It really signals a shift in how Washington views housing entirely. I mean, historically, housing is a local zoning issue, right?
Yeah, usually it's city councils, local boards. So why is the federal government getting so heavily involved here?
Well, they're realizing that a localized approach just can't combat these massive national trends, especially the huge influx of institutional investors buying up single-family homes.
Okay, but how does that actually work mechanically? The federal government doesn't have the constitutional authority to just march into a town and demand they rezone a strip mall for apartments, right?
No, they don't. But they do have the power of the purse.
Right. The money.
Exactly. This bill bundles a bunch of acts, like the Reforming Disaster Recovery Act and the Home Investment Partnerships Reauthorization.
And that home one is aimed at facilitating the construction of, 7 million homes?
Yeah, 7 million. And the strategy they're using is conditionality.
Meaning there are strings attached?
Heavy strings. Congress is leveraging federal block grants. They're telling local governments, look, we will give you the capital you desperately need for infrastructure, but only if you streamline your permitting processes.
Wow.
Yeah, they have to remove the local regulatory bottlenecks that stifle supply. Basically, the feds are buying local efficiency with federal dollars.
And this is aimed directly at the financial asymmetry in the housing market right now. Representative Stephen Horsford from Nevada brought this up on the floor.
What did he say?
He pointed out that in his home state, specifically in Las Vegas, corporate homeownership ranks second in the entire nation.
Oh, wow, second in the country.
Yeah, it impacts 30% of residents there. He was saying a local family relying on a standard 30-year mortgage just cannot compete against a Wall Street firm.
Right, because the firm has an algorithm finding undervalued properties and the cash to offer over asking price immediately.
Exactly. It's an impossible playing field.
And that is the exact market failure this bill targets. When institutional capital treats neighborhoods as just, asset classes for rental yields.
Just lines on a spreadsheet.
Right. The traditional pathway to middle-class wealth, which is homeownership, is completely severed. So by injecting federal funds to expand supply and fix HUD programs, the goal is to flood the market with inventory.
Which dilutes the pricing power of those huge investors.
Exactly. Now, the procedural reality of this vote is also super interesting.
Right. This wasn't just a preliminary vote, was it?
No. The floor action on June 23rd was a vote to concur in a Senate amendment to a House amendment.
Okay, translation for the non-wonks out there.
It basically means this text had already survived the gauntlet. Both chambers had already modified and amended each other's work. By concurring here, the House locked the text. The debate is over.
So it's heading straight to the president's desk.
Straight to the desk.
Yeah.
And you could really feel that finality on the floor.
Yeah, I saw Representative French Hill, a Republican from Arkansas, and Representative Maxine Waters, a California Democrat, actively praising each other.
Which is pretty rare to see.
Very rare. Representative Waters called it the most significant housing reform in decades.
And you had Representatives Emmanuel Cleaver and Gregory Meeks echoing that. They really framed it as protecting the American dream from corporate consolidation.
It's a striking example of populist economic anxiety bridging the aisle.
It really is.
Okay, so that concept of federal intervention acting as a backstop when local markets fail, that transitions us perfectly to S.629.
The Emergency Conservation Program Improvement Act of 2025.
Yes. Passed the House, 368 to 19. It's an agricultural bill focused on removing barriers for farmers trying to get emergency funds after natural disasters.
Right, this gets into the raw cash flow mechanics of modern farming.
Because the old system was mostly a reimbursement model, right?
Exactly.
Ah.
Under the old framework, if a wildfire takes out miles of your livestock fencing or a freeze destroys a facility, you have to finance the repairs up front.
Out of your own pocket.
Yeah, and then wait for the federal bureaucracy to eventually reimburse you.
Which, as we know, can take forever.
Yeah.
And that just fundamentally misunderstands how farming works.
Completely.
It's a super capital-intensive industry. Farmers are usually asset-rich in land and tractors, but cash-poor month to month.
Right.
So this bill changes that by authorizing a 75% advance payment on the cost of replacements. And they get this before they even carry out the repairs.
It's a huge structural change. I mean, think about it. If your operating capital is tied up in seed and fertilizer for this season, you don't have 50 grand lying around to rebuild a barn.
It's basically like getting an insurance payout to fix a collapsed roof before you actually have to pay the contractor instead of waiting to be reimbursed months later.
That's a great analogy. Giving 75% upfront recognizes that delayed relief in agriculture is basically denied relief.
Because crops and livestock won't just pause and wait for a federal audit to clear.
Exactly. And this bill also broadens how we think about disaster risk. Representative Jill Takuda, a Democrat from Hawaii, gave a great speech on this.
Yeah, she brought up the Kona low storms.
Right. We usually associate ag disasters with, Midwestern droughts or freezes in Florida. But she pointed out how the Kona storms devastated Hawaii earlier in the year.
Which proves this isn't just a mainland issue. Securing the food supply chain needs a nationwide resilience strategy.
Because weather patterns are shifting everywhere, whether it's Kona storms, Texas cold snaps, or wildfires out west.
Speaking of wildfires, there was a specific provision in S.629 about that, wasn't there?
Yeah, it expands the definition of wildfires to explicitly include those caused by the federal government.
Oh, wow. So if the Forest Service does a prescribed burn and they lose control of it?
The affected ranchers now have a clear statutory path to get indemnified. They don't have to spend years in tort litigation suing the federal government.
That's huge for liability. It really shows Congress recognizing that as these disasters get more frequent, they have to reduce the friction in getting recovery capital.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move from agricultural oversight to bureaucratic oversight. The House used a procedure called the suspension of the rules to clear a whole backlog of small business administration bills.
Right.
For anyone used to the normal, super slow, regular order, seeing a bunch of bills fly through like this is pretty jarring. It shows a very deliberate strategy by House leadership.
Yeah, operating under suspension is basically how the House clears its legislative arteries.
Okay.
It's for necessary, broadly supported maintenance bills.
It bypasses the Rules Committee entirely, right?
Exactly. But to do that, it requires a two-thirds supermajority to pass. There are no floor amendments allowed, and debate is strictly capped.
Fast track. But if you look at the 4 SBA bills they push through, there is a very cohesive oversight strategy here.
Definitely. Congress is demanding data and transparency before they write any more blank checks.
Let's rapid fire through these. First up, H.R. 826, the COVID Fraud Transparency Act of 2026.
Right. So even in 2026, they're still trying to audit all that pandemic money. This bill forces the SBA Inspector General to submit quarterly reports on pandemic loan fraud.
They want the total loans, the new cases, resolved cases, and exactly how the fraud happened.
Because the sheer scale of that capital injection basically broke the agency's normal underwriting systems.
Next is H.R. 8880, the Small Business Cybersecurity Assistance Evaluation Act. This one has the Government Accountability Office assess how well federal programs protect small businesses from ransomware.
And that's so critical. A ransomware attack on a local clinic or a small trucking company is basically an extinction-level event.
Yeah, they don't have a giant IT department to negotiate with hackers or air-gap their servers.
No, they don't. So Congress is asking, are the SBA's resources actually helping mitigate this threat, or are they just, publishing best practice PDFs that nobody reads?
Right. And that tech anxiety carries right into H.R. 8081, the SBA Artificial Intelligence Utilization Act.
Which requires the SBA to report annually on exactly how it's using AI and machine learning to process loans.
Because they process massive amounts of data to determine lending risk, Congress wants a human-in-the-loop architecture here.
Exactly. They are terrified of algorithmic bias. If an AI is denying a loan to a minority-owned business, Congress wants to know there's a mechanism for a real human to step in and override that black box algorithm.
And rounding out the bundle is H.R. 7396, the Native American Entrepreneurial Opportunity Act, establishing an Office of Native American Affairs within the SBA.
So looking at all four together, you see Congress systematically trying to close the information gap between themselves and the executive agency spending the money.
Right, demanding continuous feedback on fraud, cyber vulnerabilities, and AI.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about consensus and things functioning smoothly.
Yeah, but we need to pivot, because June 23rd also had some profound partisan clashes.
Big time. Over in the Senate, there was a razor-thin 50-48 vote on H.Con.Res, 86.
That was the resolution directing the president to remove U.S. armed forces from hostilities with Iran.
Right. And this cuts right to the core constitutional tension. You have Article 1 giving Congress the sole power to declare war, versus Article 2 making the president the commander-in-chief.
And as always on this deep dive, we are staying strictly neutral here. We're just presenting the mechanics of the arguments on both sides.
Yep. So the debate was heavily anchored in the War Powers Resolution of 1973. Democratic senators like Tim Kaine of Virginia and Chris Murphy of Connecticut forced this vote.
Their argument was that the military actions the president initiated in February 2026 went way beyond defensive maneuvers.
Right. They argued it constituted unauthorized hostilities. Senator Kaine was very forceful about how the design of the Republic requires the legislative branch to actually authorize war.
He argued that unchecked executive war-making violates the constitutional order.
But then you had the counter-argument from Republicans, like Senator Tom Cotton. They focused on the tactical realities of modern threats.
Their perspective is that forcing a statutory withdrawal severely degrades the president's operational agility.
Exactly. They argue that telegraphing an exit strategy to adversaries in the Persian Gulf undermines deterrence and puts deployed personnel at risk.
They're saying the executive branch needs the flexibility to respond to asymmetrical threats without waiting for a deeply polarized Congress to debate every single tactical move.
And a 50-48 vote shows an almost perfectly divided chamber. It really highlights how hard it is to apply an 18th century constitutional framework to 21st century warfare with drones and proxy forces.
It's a live dispute over presidential power. Really fascinating.
Very.
Okay, shifting gears entirely. Let's talk about some notable speeches during the morning hour debate in the House.
Oh, this is always a good barometer for what's brewing politically.
It really is. It's the designated time for members to talk about issues outside the day's legislative calendar. And Representative Greg Murphy, a Republican from North Carolina who is also a practicing physician, delivered this blistering critique of the healthcare industry.
And what's wild is how it totally scrambled traditional partisan lines.
Completely. He targeted what he called the middleman oligopoly in for-profit health insurance.
He brought some staggering data to the floor. He noted that in 2025, the top 7 for-profit health insurers made over $50 billion in profit.
At worst, he highlighted that since 2015, they've authorized $137 billion in stock buybacks.
We should probably break down the mechanics of a buyback for a second.
Yeah, let's do that. So when a corporation uses its revenue to buy its own shares back on the open market, it artificially reduces the supply of shares.
Right, which inflates the value of the remaining stock.
Exactly. And that heavily enriches the executives and major shareholders whose pay is tied to stock performance.
And Representative Murphy's main point was that These insurers get a massive chunk of their revenue straight from American taxpayers.
Through programs like Medicare Advantage and ACA subsidies.
Right. So his argument is that instead of using that taxpayer money to lower premiums or expand coverage, these corporations are basically doing financial engineering to boost their equity.
He's explicitly calling this a massive capital misallocation. But the political dynamic is what's truly fascinating here.
Oh, yeah?
You have a conservative Republican explicitly saying on the House floor that he would prefer to break up these corporate giants and eliminate for-profit health insurance entirely.
Which is wild because historically, aggressive antitrust sentiment and attacking the profit motive in healthcare, that's been the hallmark of the progressive left.
It's the horseshoe effect in real time. The populist right and progressive left are identifying the exact same market failures.
They're showing a shared hostility toward corporations that prioritize shareholders over essential services.
And that shared hostility carried over to another major speech, this one by Representative Suhas Subramaniam, a Democrat from Virginia.
Yes. He went after the invisible architecture of the economy.
He introduced the S.Res. Prices Act to fight something called surveillance pricing.
This is so dystopian. Surveillance pricing is basically the monetization of digital surveillance.
Yeah, algorithms ingest massive amounts of your data, your browsing history, geolocation, past purchases, to calculate the absolute maximum price you specifically are willing to pay at that exact moment.
Representative Subramaniam used a brutal example about airlines. Imagine you have a sudden family death and you're frantically searching for cross-country flights.
The algorithm sees you refreshing the page over and over. It knows your demand is highly inelastic. You have to buy that ticket no matter what.
So the system dynamically inflates the price of that specific route just for you on your specific device.
It completely destroys the concept of a transparent market. You think you're looking at a standard supply and demand price, but you're actually trapped in an algorithmic negotiation where the vendor has perfect information about your vulnerability.
It's horrifying. So the SLA's Prices Act is trying to force transparency on these models and give consumers an opt-out mechanism.
Representative Subramaniam also introduced the Data Infrastructure, Energy Measurement, and Standards Act, which ties back to what we said at the very top of the deep dive.
About data centers eating the power grid.
Right. He noted the U.S. has over 5,000 data centers, with thousands more being built for AI and cloud computing.
And projecting that they could use 12% of the nation's energy output by 2028. These facilities require massive baseload power and millions of gallons of water just to keep the servers from melting.
And local towns are often lured in by the promise of tax revenue without understanding the toll it's going to take on their local aquifer or power grid.
His legislation basically forces transparency on water and megawatt consumption so communities can actually assess the risk.
Okay, from tech regulation to a profound ideological conflict.
The Dobbs anniversary.
Yeah, the Senate floor action on June 23rd was heavily shaped by the 4th anniversary of the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
And as always, we're just looking impartially at the procedural mechanics of how this played out on the floor.
Right. Republican senators, led by Steve Daines of Montana and Joni Ernst of Iowa, used a mechanism called unanimous consent to try and push through pro-life legislation.
Their arguments were rooted in fetal rights and the moral imperative of human dignity.
But then Democratic senators like Ed Markey of Massachusetts immediately objected, which halted the legislation.
And then the Democrats countered with their own unanimous consent requests for comprehensive reproductive rights,
which Republicans then objected to.
So we need to explain the tactical utility of unanimous consent here.
It's basically procedural warfare.
Right. Exactly. When a senator asks for unanimous consent on highly contentious legislation, they know with 100% certainty that the other party will object. It only takes one person to block it.
So they aren't actually trying to pass a law.
No, not at all. They are manufacturing political accountability. They are forcing the opposing party to stand on the floor and formally object on camera.
So they can clip the video, put it in campaign ads, and prove to their base that the other side is hostile to their values?
Right. It's pure messaging warfare to draw permanent, unyielding ideological lines.
And that battle over national values even extended to American history. As we get closer to the semi-quincentennial, the 250th anniversary in 2026, Congress is actively debating our origin story.
Representative Harriet Hagman, a Wyoming Republican, gave a speech directly contrasting historical models.
She challenged the 1619 Project framework, which argues the American narrative is fundamentally defined by slavery, and instead advocated for the 1620 Mayflower narrative.
focusing on the Pilgrims, Judeo-Christian values, and what Ronald Reagan called a golden age of America.
And this wasn't just talk. The Senate actually passed S.4.828, a bill reaffirming the Declaration of Independence as an organic law of the United States.
Meaning it forms the structural basis of the state. It's a fascinating attempt by Congress to use statutory power to influence how American history is taught and prioritized.
Okay, as we near the end of the stack, there's this underlying theme of extreme anxiety regarding autonomous technology.
Oh, Congress is terrified of road tech. The 20th century rules just do not work anymore.
Look at H.R. 3334, the USCP Empowerment Act of 2025. It massively expands the power of Capitol Police to neutralize unauthorized drones in restricted airspace.
Right. They can detect, monitor, hack, seize, or just outright destroy a drone they perceive as a threat.
But implementing that is wildly complex. You can't just start jamming radio signals or shooting things out of the sky in the middle of Washington, D.C.
No, the collateral risks are huge. That's why the bill mandates coordination with the Secretary of Transportation. The national airspace system is so delicate.
Yeah, if Capitol Police jam a drone signal, they might accidentally mess with commercial planes flying out of Reagan National or a medevac helicopter.
Not to mention the debris field of blowing up a drone over a populated area.
Right. And then you have S3062, which tackles the digital realm, specifically AI chatbots.
This bill imposes strict age verification to keep minors away from AI companions. But more importantly, it targets deception.
It requires companies to put clear, unavoidable disclosures so users know they are not talking to a human being.
And the penalty is severe, up to $100,000 per violation. They are trying to establish a hard legal boundary between human and synthetic interaction.
Okay, what about future implications? What's pending?
Well, there's S3039 and S3060, which reveal some deep institutional pessimism. They are basically pre-negotiated contingency plans for a government shutdown.
Right, because when appropriations lapse, federal operations halt. S3039 ensures federal employees still get paid during a shutdown, and S3060 does the same for the military.
It shows how shutdowns aren't anomalies anymore. They are just expected, baked-in risks of the budget cycle. Congress is building a shock absorber for its own dysfunction.
And lastly, S.Res. 784. This is a resolution to ban senators from trading publicly traded stocks and cryptocurrency, taking effect January 1st, 2027.
If that passes, it's the biggest ethics overhaul in decades. The fact that lawmakers can personally trade equities in the industries they actively regulate has severely degraded public trust.
So, stepping back, when you look at June 23rd housing intervention, ag relief, war powers, populist healthcare outrage, tech anxiety, what is the macro-level narrative?
It's an institution fighting to reclaim its leverage. For decades, power has flowed away from Congress toward the executive branch, administrative agencies, and massive tech corporations.
Right.
What we saw today is Congress using every tool it has, funding, conditionality, subpoenas, mandates, to reassert its constitutional authority over this rapidly evolving landscape.
That is the raw reality of the legislative machine. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive. I want to thank you, the listener, for spending this time with us.
Civic awareness is the absolute prerequisite for civic accountability.
And as we said up top, if you value this ad-free analysis, please use the Buy Me a Coffee link in the episode description. It's the only way we fund the research and infrastructure for these deep dives.
We also want you to get involved. You can find all the bills we talked about today on congress.gov.
Yeah, just search HR 6644 or S3062 to read the text yourself.
And contact your local representatives. Ask where they stand on surveillance pricing or corporate housing takeovers or data center energy use. Track their voting records. It's highly effective.
Absolutely. Now, I'll leave you with a final thought before our next deep dive. We've seen Congress realizing that the virtual world has a massive physical cost. They are trying to regulate AI while confronting the fact that the data centers powering it might soon eat 12% of our national energy supply.
It's staggering.
So as we race to tame the digital frontier, ask yourself, is our physical infrastructure, our power grids, our local water aquifers actually prepared to bear the immense weight of the cloud? The future might be artificial intelligence, but it is entirely dependent on the physical resources of the Earth. Think about the megawatt cost the next time you ask an algorithm a question. Until next time.